This is how most jobs start though, with a brew. Right then, so when I'm doing a room, I'll always have a dust sheet on the outside, so when I come out of the room I can wipe my feet and check them over. So we're ready to start the filling on the wall. So let's have a quick look around the wall. Some nasty bits. Big fat edge on that, so we've got to sort that out. Down the casing's not too bad. Still a bit of filling to do. A lot of it I'm going to backfill with foam. So the first step is to sand this bare wood down to get it a bit smoother along the skirting board and along the picture rail. Another few holes there. It's quite a rough wall really. So I think eventually I'm going to put a feature wallpaper on this wall. Let's have a look down here. Again, there's a few loose bits there. I'm not going to hack it out, I'm just going to leave that and deal with it as it is. There's a crack along here, which I am going to rake out, put a few holes in, squirt a bit of foam in. Just make it a bit more secure. It's not too bad, you know. That's quite solid, that is really. So I'm going to start at the top, sanding. But I'm also going to sand the picture rail. And I'm going to sand all of that as I'm going. And I'm going to give the wall a sand over as well. There's a few lumps on that picture rail you can see there. A few more. So I can sand them back and deal with the way the paint come off. So, right, let's see what I'm going to use to... One of the most important things is a dust mask. Another second important thing is a pair of gloves. When you've been sanding all day, especially with heavy grit sandpaper, the ends of your fingers become raw. It literally just rubs off the skin. So a pair of gloves essential. Depending on what you're sanding, some eye protection. For anybody out there who is not used to this game, a DIY person, they're going to save your eyes. I mean, apparently there's loads of accidents at the minute with people doing DIY, and one of it is losing an eye, so yeah, be careful. I'm not so bad because I wear glasses. Moving on to the sandpaper. Now this is P60. You see the grit on that. Now when you take a piece off, fold it in half like that. Make sure you keep it in line, pinch along the edge, and then there you go, not too bad. And then fold it halfway on one side, and then halfway again on the other side. Basically, you're left with that. And what you can do is swap sides, so really you've got three sides to work with, and it stops it from slipping about as well. And what I usually do is I'll make myself 2 or 3 of those, put them in my pocket, so if I'm on my steps and I drop one straight away, just go on another one, don't have to get down. So, on with the dust mask. On with the gloves. I'm ready to start sanding now. Another couple of things you'll need is your blade, just in case you come across any lumps on the wall, you can get rid of them. And a dust brush, give it a dust off once you've sanded it down. Let's have a look. Starting at the top on the picture rail, you can see the lump there. Gone. Just a little bit more sanding on that. You know, so you can tidy things up as you go. That looks like a nail, that, so I'll leave that. Looks like another one there. So you're just going to break the tops off some of them. Anyway, so that's the picture rail. And work all the way down it to the bottom edge. And give that bottom edge a good sand. Looks like all that paint's going to come off, that's not been keyed properly. And then the other side. And then the wall. And work your way along doing that in sections halfway down. And then get off your steps and do the bottom half. So when it comes to the bottom half of the wall, you can leave the skirting for the time being. And with your sandpaper, just to halfway. You can swap your arms if you ever get small things. It's also a good idea to make sure you only sand one direction on the wall. If you do a bit of that, always make sure you finish with that. Undo the light switch and sand the wall behind. And give that a dust out and then screw it back. So when you've sanded the wall down and you give it a dust off, don't dust the skirting. Get your hoover, get your vacuum cleaner. And then opening the nozzle on the end so you don't suck up the carpet. once you've done that, you can then sand the top edge of the skirting board and just that little bit at the front on the skirting board. You can sand the top edge of the skirting board. And then you can just do the little bit of the face. Don't go all the way down, because you'll mess your dust sheets up and you'll get muck everywhere. You can do that when you've done all the filling and the rest of the other process. So once you've finished your sanding and you've given it all the dust off, you need to seal this bare wood first before we do anything else. And I'm going to use bin primer for that because it dries really quick. You could just put oil wood primer on there. There's no point in putting an acrylic primer on there really, because we're going to be putting water on the wall and there's going to be fillers about, so really an oil one's better. But I'm going to use bin primer. I'll show you that. This is where I keep my brush, inside here. Now I always top it up every now and then, a little bit of methylated spirits, which keeps the brush, as you can see, nice and soft. This brush is over 2 years old now, been in there, nothing wrong with it. Bristles are really nice, not stiff or anything. So I'll put the lid back on that straight away. Now I've got 2 tins of bin primer here. That's a relatively new one, and this is one that I work out of. So I'll open this one first. In fact, usually with this stuff, because I've been using it, it's already been stirred up a lot, but I'll always give it a quick shake. I only shake bin primer, other paints I'd rather stir up. Just leave that for a second because it just drips off the lid. Whatever doesn't, just give it a wipe round. You don't need to worry too much about getting bits of the white pigment dropping into it, because the alcohol in the meths, it just dilutes it and it turns liquid again, so don't worry too much about that. Just make sure there's nothing stuck on the bottom, and I'll usually thin it a little bit if I've not used it for a couple of days. You can tell the right consistency you want it when you buy a new tin. Just keep in mind how thin that is when you buy it, and that's how you can tell how much thinner you need to put back in when it evaporates off, because this stuff, it evaporates really quickly. Right, then into my pot, and that's how I work with it, like that. Starting first with a picture rail, right at the top. This stuff runs. Got to be quick with it. And try and work in small sections, don't go too far. And once you've done a bit, don't go back over it. Got to work fast with this stuff, so if you do get a splash on something like the wall, you might have to wipe it off as you go in. Don't let them dry. Just move on. Give you a closer look at that. On the skirting, you're not wanting to do the plaster, you're just wanting to do the wood. But what I do is I push the brush and literally let it flood around the top edge into the wall. Once you finish your priming, leave it for at least 20 minutes to harden off. If you're doing a lot in a room, by the time you've gone round, it's probably dry enough on the first wall you started, so you can seal that wall with diluted PVA. One thing before you do your PVA, make sure wherever you've got a crack or there's any holes that you want to make a little bit bigger or clean out, and most of it should have been done anyway, but there's a crack just down here, so I'm going to give this a little clean out. Just follow the crack down carefully. I mean, this isn't too bad, this crack at all, because the plaster's solid on both sides really, so I'm not going to bother using any foam on this. Just break it out. That's not too bad, and basically that's the only crack really on this wall. It's not too bad at all. There's obviously the bit there and a few holes, but other than that it's not too bad. When you're mixing your PVA, always read the instructions, and it does say on here, let's have a quick look, general purpose priming, sealing on porous surfaces. Alright, so people who say you can't use it, yeah, no nonsense. So in this bucket of water, I've got about, I'd say, 5 pints, and in that, let's have a look how much I put in. Hardly anything really. That's it. Now that's plenty, that is. It's probably more like 7 pints, that. I was never good at saying how many pints I've had. Anyway, give it a good mix up. And taking your flat brush, give the wall a coat. Shake your brush out a bit. Starting at the top, just under the picture rail. Scrub it in. What you're after doing is working it in to the plaster without getting it everywhere. Let it soak into any holes. Just give it a scrub about. Make sure you've not got any runs when you finish the section. And if you do see any, you can always go back over and rub them out. Don't let it dry. You can see the difference there, how much that's soaking in. Again, keep the same direction of what you do. Sanding, put your PVA on. Wipe picture rail with cloth. It's a damp cloth. Usually you better just bringing a section down and then moving on, because you can see the run slightly down the wall there. Then if you do a section, you've never got anything drying on you. You don't have to wait too long for your PVA to dry on the wall when you're finished. When you're doing the foam, make sure you have a piece of newspaper. It's good for wiping up any mess. And you've got gloves on, very important. Sometimes if you're working above head height, put some glasses on, safety specs. This, I used this possibly, I don't know, well it'll be like 4 weeks ago now. So first of all, give it a good shake up. Let's see. Break the round, press the tube first of all. It's a bit solid there at the end. Usually, once you've scrolls it round, just be careful, and that's why you have a piece of newspaper. Now I'll just show you what's come out the end. So squeezing the tube has released it, and then it's popped out. That's not too bad. My dust sheets caught most of it, so that's why you've got to be very careful. Anyway, we're ready to do some foaming. You don't need loads. Depending on the gap, you can put more in. There's some solid brick there. So adjust how much you're putting in to the gap. I'll show you that when I've finished the wall. When you've finished, just leave your gun like that, dripping onto a piece of newspaper for a couple of minutes. Let the pressure come out of that tube. I'll just show you the foam. Now, I've not needed to put any around the picture rail, that was okay. Go. And down here I actually decided just to run some in that crack and just cut the top off, and saves a bit of hassle. I've left that bit there. I'm going to just put filler in there, so it's just waiting now for that to harden off, which about an hour and a half, sometimes quicker than that, but make sure the room is well ventilated as you're doing this, because it gives off noxious gases. Usually I use my mask as I'm doing this, my P3. So right, I'll leave that to dry. So turning back to the foam, I've allowed that just to push out for a couple of minutes. And now I'm just going to push it out on a piece of newspaper towards the end. Get out as much as you can. That's not too bad. And then put the stopper in the end.